Bruce Aitchison, Mr. Happiness is Egg-Shaped. Welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast.
I am absolutely honoured to be here. You are a spectacular man doing great things, so thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. Now, having heard you speak about rugby and Scottish rugby quite a bit in the past, I'm tempted to just be a really lazy podcaster and just give you the mic and say, go. But, I mean, if I did do that, how long do you think you might be able to talk for?
Well, I just got asked to be on the Scrum of the Earth podcast with a great guy, Dave, in just outside Boston. And then he published it a couple of days ago, and it was 2 hours long. so I don't think you've paid for the Zoom account to last that long, mate. So we better get on with it.
Absolutely. Okay, right. I always love people's origin stories within rugby. So tell me, Bruce, how did you get into the game in the first place?
School, football was my first love. My dream was to play for Hibs and play for Scotland in a World Cup, which is probably fantasy now to young kids playing for Scotland in a World Cup. And then I went to Galashiels Academy, which is in the Scottish borders, the space between Edinburgh and the English border, where rugby's the main show. It's in every town. The town rivalries are huge, but when we would come together and play as a district, as the south of Scotland, band of brothers coming together and fighting against everybody else, it was a really special thing. And 3 PE teachers who just lit the flame, really. A guy called Rob Moffat, who's influenced so many rugby people throughout the world now. Clark Laidlaw in New Zealand, we'll talk about Rob Moffat. Graham Moffat in Canada, no relation, we'll talk about Rob Moffat's influence, as well as Gregor Townsend and Chris Patterson and a huge number of others. So Rob Moffat was my PE teacher, put huge amounts of energy and enthusiasm into coaching and developing players. Bill Noble, who I got on so well with, an amazing relationship with Bill, and I actually now work with his son. He lives next door to me, actually, and we work in the senior rugby program at the school I work in now, Merchiston Castle. And Ian, Bill's son, used to come to the games on a Saturday morning as a nipper. So he was watching me play schoolboy rugby. And when we got to our last year at school, my squad won the Scottish Cup, and Ian was with his dad and came into the changing room after the game. And this year, my school won the Scottish Cup, and it's 25 years since I won it as a schoolboy captain in my last year of school. So I was able to send Bill, my teacher and coach of that squad, a selfie with me and Ian, his son, together as part of the coaching team. And 25 years previously, almost to the day, we were about 3 days shy of the two of us together having been kind of together 25 years ago. So rugby, getting a bit emotional. Rugby is one of those spectacular things where it's quite often these circles close. And then the third musketeer is a guy called Davy Wright, who was from Hawick but worked in Gala. And although he didn't really coach me at rugby, was a huge influence as a PE teacher. And then when I became a trainee PE teacher, it happened that Davy Wright, I went to the school he was working in. So the joke I have with Davy Wright is he taught me at primary school in primary 4. He taught me in S4, which is when you're 16 up here. He taught me in S4 at school, and then I did my 4th year teaching placement with him. So he taught me in P4, S4, and 4th year of uni, and is still somebody that I have contact with. So the 3 of them, rugby was just part of the DNA of the school. You did it, you loved it, you went and did extra, you played on a Saturday. The bus trips were immense. We went on a Canadian tour when I was in S4, and going on tour just bonds people together in a way that it's difficult to put into words. And I was okay at it. I wasn't brilliant at it. I got to play in the South of Scotland team. I got to be captain of some of the teams I played for. I went to uni, I was able to play club rugby, which I just loved. And then rugby gave me a ticket to meet people, to go places, to share experiences with people, and you make those memories, and the further away I get from the actual events, the greater the memories become, because I mean, how good were we all when we were younger? So it's rugby's just given me a confidence and a vehicle to become the person I have. Lots of people find it in other ways: football, music, drama, politics, whatever it is. It just so happened that it was this funny shaped ball that I seemed to fall in love with.
Oh, amazing stories, especially about those cup finals as well. That's something really, really special. Now, you mentioned there about it being a vehicle for self-confidence and meeting people. Now, following you on social media as I do, I'm often seeing you with selfies with lots of very famous people, along with lots of other people as well. So it's very obvious that you love to do that. Now, what I'm going to reference now is the shirt that you're wearing, because I think this is a big part of it as well. So tell me about there it is. Tell me about the Happiness is Egg-Shaped project, how it came about, and what it all is.
All by accident, really. By the way, behind that selfie is a wife rolling her eyes. When we were at the Commonwealth Games, she just ended up taking herself away at one point. Yeah, Happiness Egg-Shape all started actually with a t-shirt. My middle brother, I'm the youngest of three, go figure, the one that needs attention and shouts a lot is the youngest of three boys. And my middle brother bought me a t-shirt, and it said Happiness is Egg-Shaped, and it was in the shape of a rugby ball. And that, I loved it. And Facebook was, I didn't get into social media at the beginning. I wasn't a Bebo or a MySpace or any of that kind of stuff. I didn't get it. And I went onto Facebook purely to find one person, a guy I'd played rugby with at Watsonians in Edinburgh when I was in my second and third year of uni. And he was a big, handsome winger that scored tries and was from down south and was studying up here. And we got on brilliantly. And then social media wasn't a thing then, so we went our separate ways. I didn't accept people that I saw every day as friends. I didn't get it. I didn't think that was like, what's the point in that? And then you'd meet them and they go, why didn't you accept my friend request? So, oh, right, okay. So the network began to build, and I don't go to the pub. I'm not, I don't go and stand at the end of the bar. My social was rugby, but Facebook gave me that platform to be the guy at the end of the bar going, do you know what I think? Or here's my opinion on something totally irrelevant. So, but I did it. I don't take myself too seriously as you, I think, know. And I used to rant on Facebook about ticket prices or referees or the ruck disappearing from the game or World Rugby, or when I was having problems with my gas company or so. But it was always tongue in cheek, and I think people understood it. And I used to sign off my rugby rants after I got this T-shirt. I used to sign it off with "Happiness is egg-shaped," and it just people would. I remember a buddy of mine wrote a comment saying, I don't even read books, and it's taken me forever to read that. I can't believe I wasted my time. But just having as mates do, just having a crack at you, and people would go through the Olympics and Commonwealth Games and World Cups and things. I would sort of add my comments, and people would like it. And then this Happiness Egg-Shaped thing, just kind of people would go, oh, all right, Mr. Egg-Shaped, or Mr. And somebody said to me, oh, you should get a Facebook page. So I started a Facebook page, and when I look back on the very early posts, I was clutching at straws. I was obviously panicking. I'd gone through Google Images and was just posting rugby stuff because I didn't really know what it was. And then I sort of found my voice and found my identity, and I'm very precious over it. It's just me. I got a message from a mate of mine about couple of months ago who followed me on Twitter, and I try and respond to people who follow me on Twitter with a welcome message, and he sent me a WhatsApp saying, oh, your bots are working hard today. And I replied going, my what? My bots? And he said, yeah, I got a welcome. I was like, no, that's me, mate. And he was like, what, you do that? I was like, yeah, but I don't get 1,000 people a day. I get maybe 2 or 3 a day. So Facebook was where it began. It's still home. near 40,000 followers, which means it's more than just my mum and my buddies that follow, which is quite cool. And people shout at me. And when I was at the Commie Games, I had two really sort of lip quavering moments. This lady came up and sort of gave me a hug because I'd posted something about trans women in rugby, and she came up and gave me a hug and said thank you. Now I don't know this woman, but she spotted me. I had the T-shirt on, and it was quite a nice thing. And then I had someone else come up and give me a high five and said, "Oh, are you that guy? I like your style." Now that's quite cool. And Twitter I got onto, but I didn't understand, and it wasn't long enough for me. It only had 140 characters at the beginning, so you can't rant with 140 characters. You certainly can't get over your sort of sarcasm in 140 characters. So Twitter I found difficult, but I love the intimacy of it. I love that you can almost have a conversation, and I use it to be social. I don't slag MD off. I don't have a crack at a referee or somebody that's had a bad game, or I don't really question decisions by governing bodies. It's to spread the joy of the game, and I've made contacts like yourself. And then my big mate Sean Phelan from Fill Your Boots, who you know well and are getting to know well. Sean had been at me for a while and said, "You need to start a podcast." And at the time, confidence was nowhere near. I said, "But why would you listen to me? There's hundreds of podcasts. What have I got to say that anybody else hasn't already said?" And then through Doddie, and we'll talk about Doddie in a while, when Rob Wainwright, who is one of the most bonkers people you're ever going to meet in your entire life, he is just off his chump. And he got in touch with me about this idea for Doddie Aid, which was for most of the month of January, racking up miles and awareness and funds for Doddie's Foundation. And I said to him, "Listen, what about doing a live show every week, and we can get the captains on and we can promote it?" And he said, "No, there won't be an appetite for it." I said, "Rob, are you kidding me on? Some of the names you've got involved are huge. People would love to speak to them." And we were in lockdown. So, TV was on repeat. There was nothing fresh happening. He said, "Oh, right, 20 minutes." I was like, "Rob, I can't limit myself to 20 minutes, never mind having guests. Like, let's just see how it goes." He's like, "Right, 40 minutes maximum." I was like, "Rob, no chance." And he was really twitchy about it. So on the Thursday nights through that first Doddie Aid, we did interviews. I got to meet Lorraine. I had Chris Hoy, and then I had a whole load of rugby guys, Jim Hamilton, and it was just amazing. But it was everything that is beautiful. It was for a great cause in the game, light-hearted. The agenda was to make the world a better place, and people had nowhere else to go. Like, we had a captive audience. People that are busy people like Jim Hamilton and Jill Douglas and Gabby and all these people. They didn't have anywhere else to be. So we had the talent, and then we had the audience, and off the back of that was what launched the podcast. And Rupert Moon was the first one we sent out. I love the guy. It's a terrible podcast. I'm awful on it. My wife gave me feedback over the first few and said, "You need to stop answering the question in your question." And I think that was a comfort thing. I was trying to make sure I got what I needed, but it was it was critical, but it was useful, and I think that's helped. My mum gives me a row all the time because I laugh, and she says, "I can't hear what they're saying. If you're laughing, I can't hear what they're saying." So I get bits of feedback from the people closest to me, but I've spoken to big names, and I've spoken to my mates. And actually, when you look at the figures, quite often the most popular ones are the ones where I speak to people I already know, because it becomes a conversation. And although maybe people in Australia and Singapore and Chile are not listening to me speaking to my mate that I played rugby with, there's a lot of listens from the people that we both know. So it's quite localized, but the number is bigger. And I've spoken to Jim Telfer and Ben Ryan and Damien Hughes and David Smith, who were all on the list at the beginning. And I've spoken to Bruce Douglas, as I played prop for Scotland and Harlequins and Scarlets, and I played rugby at under 18 level with Bruce. And I got in touch with him. I bumped into him a couple of times, said, "Will you come on the podcast?" Came on. We had a great chat. I loved it. He's an amazing guy, doing great things in business now, proper interesting stuff supporting businesses. And he messaged me a couple of weeks later and said, listen, thanks very much for the pod, really enjoyed it. Through that, guys I used to play with, I've been in touch, and I'm going to meet a guy I played with at Scarlet's for a coffee, and I've not seen him since I played. Like, how cool is that?
Magic,
So,
absolutely magic.
Those things are, and the pod, like, I'm speaking at dinner this weekend, which I'm really excited about, and I love the immediacy of that. I get a laugh or a tumbleweed, or, you know, I can press the flesh with somebody, and you get that when you do a podcast. It just, away it goes, and you record them, and then there's a little lag before you send them out. And I'm at Sean all the time, can we just send them out like every day? And he's like, no, that's not how it works. But I've had people, you know, that I've never met before saying, oh, love your podcast. I've had kids that I teach listen to the podcast. My daughter turned up at a school activity day wearing a Happiness is egg-shaped hoodie, and the boys are going, why are you wearing that? She's like, that's my dad. I went, no, it's not. And she's going, that my dad's Happiness is egg-shaped. And some of the girls were giving her stick, saying, why are you copying the boys wearing a Happiness is egg-shaped hoodie? She's like, that's my dad. My dad's Happiness is egg-shaped. And then their dads are going, well, I listened to his podcast. And it's quite cool. I freaked Ben Ryan out, I think, because I told him I listened to his podcast in the shower. You know, and it's that
wait,
weird.
Wait, you were in the shower with Ben Ryan, or you listened to
hey, go for it. Go for it. Let's make that go viral. Me and Ben Ryan having a shower together. But I also got a really lovely one that put the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. A friend of mine, Lisa, another one that's mad as a box of frogs. And I did right at the beginning, because I love Murrayfield, I did a mini pod. And it was my love story to Murrayfield, and I would talk for about 10 minutes about a day or a game or something that happened at Murrayfield that meant a lot to me. And Lisa walks to work, and her walk was the length of time for one of those pods. And it used to come out on a Thursday. So the big pod would come out on a Monday, and the little pod would come out, the Murrayfield pods would come out on the Thursday. And she messaged me to say, I was listening to your pod on the way to work today. And like gave me a nice little comment. Getting a little bit emotional here. Like, I've not seen Lisa because we couldn't, and it's been a while, and she was able to walk with me to work. Like, that's amazing. And you know, it doesn't need to be big. It needs to be fun, which it is for me, and hopefully the people that come on, I think they tend to enjoy it. Sean and I do it together, which is great because I get to do it with my mate, and it's spread the word, and through that, other opportunities have come to go and speak at things or host things or get involved in stuff that's not necessarily rugby because of my interview skills. And Lorraine Kelly, when we did the Doddie this year, Jenny Faulkner, Lorraine Kelly, Gabby Logan, Jill Douglas, like massive big hitters, like heroes of mine. But I would always finish with, look, I've just got one more question. And, you know, they sort of move forward and they get a little bit tense going, what is he going to hit me with? And I always go, so like, how did I do? And, you know, they're of course they're going to be complimentary because we're on a charity thing, like they get. But Lorraine said to me, do you know, Bruce, the thing that you're good at is you listen. And I like that because I talk far too much as you are desperate to cut in and get on with the next question. But I listen, but I really, because I love what I do, it's not a job, it's a really passionate hobby. I just love it. And the people, back to the sort of rugby thing, the people I've met, the opportunities it's given me, the relationships I've built, and I've got some amazing memories. And Lorraine Kelly knows who I am. How cool is that?
That is really cool.
It all started from a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's amazing. That is such a great story. And I had no idea about the origin and how it was so organic in the beginning. And it's come all the way through to this. And yeah, it was amazing to hear you talk about the podcast game there and what it's like to do this, because actually you've described a lot of similar feelings that I have about it as well. You just reach out and meet new people like yourself, but also for me, reaching backwards and talking to a load of people sort of from my rugby past that I haven't spoken to in years, and catching up with people has just been really, really amazing. But let's move on now to hashtag Clubland. And what does that exactly mean to you?
So, you know, when I tag it on things like Instagram, it comes up with like clubs in Ibiza, and it's like, yeah, it's not that Clubland. Well, I didn't grow up. I've not got the story of going to the club and my dad playing and my mum doing the teas and my brother. Like, I've not got that story. That wasn't the village I was from. Didn't have a rugby team. It was so small. There was 50 kids, 60 kids in my primary school. We didn't do it at primary school. There wasn't enough kids to do it. So I didn't have that. But what I did have were mates who went. So I can remember going to Gala Sevens when I was a kid. My dad took me, and it was lashing it down with rain. It was a miserable experience, but Fiji were there. I think Germany were there the week before Melrose Sevens. So they would come and have their sort of rehearsal and their training camp before Melrose. And I just loved it. And I remember watching the boys doing the scoreboard and being so jealous. Like, how cool is that, doing the scoreboard, putting up Watsonians against Fiji, and, you know, 5 and 21, and like, how cool was that? And then watching the ball boys, and then between the semi-finals and the final, there'd be a minis game would come on, and these kids that were the same age as me were getting to run around in front of these thousands of people, because at the time the Sevens was a big deal. And it was like, that looks really cool. And then when I went to secondary school, and you get that little bit of freedom, and I would get on the bus and go to Galashiels, the bigger town, and be with mates, and let's go to the rugby, and their dads were there, and you'd be mucking around behind the posts and, you know, knocking 7 colours out each other, and then going into the bar for a Coke afterwards, and the players would come in, and it was like, whoa, like, they're heroes. And at the time they were kind of playing for Scotland or for the South, so they were big names. And then a good mate of mine, Guy Frater, who's does engraving and trophies now. He's called the Trophy Guy, which is just genius. And he engraves some spectacular trophies, like the Melrose Sevens trophy. You know, all these jobs that are involved in rugby that are not rugby, and he gets a big kick out of that. He can't he's never going to play in it, and he's never going to win it, but he gets to engrave it, which is cool. Guy was a big Melrose man. His dad played for Melrose, mum was involved at the club, and he would go. And I remember going and being with him when Melrose won the league, and getting all the players, to Craig Chalmers and Doddie and Carl Hogg and Graham Shield and Brian Redpath and all these guys, to sign my programme. And that's one of the things I say about Clubland, that heroes walk among us. You can get close. Football now, you know, as a punter, I can't go and mix with England, Scotland international footballers. They're not in that world anymore. And it'll come to rugby, unfortunately, but I don't think in my lifetime. So I was able to see these people and feel the warmth in that clubhouse. And then as I became a player, you know, the clubhouse after a game of rugby is just hard to describe. And I used to say that when I was involved in clubs, about trying to get kids who weren't from a rugby background. They would go and they would train with the development officer, and then they'd go home. And it's like, no, we need to get them in the club. They need to come to the clubhouse. They need to feel that environment. And we did it with a group of kids at inner city school I worked in here, Tynecastle, and I was with the club Murrayfield Wanderers, who were just round the corner. And the kids came and they did a training session. They watched us warm up. They watched us play. They came into the clubhouse. They got a drink and a pie and they loved it. And it's like, right, now how do we get the parents in? How do we get people back? How do we get... So that clubhouse atmosphere, my daughters are now 12 and 10, but through my time as a coach, they loved the clubhouse. They would get a special juice from behind the bar, and they would be able to hold the raffle tickets. And one of the clubs I was at would always doctor the raffle that they would win a 4-pack of J2O. And, you know, and I would be able to be having a chat to an opposition coach or the committee. My wife could be having a drink with people she knows, and we don't know where the kids are, but they were safe.
Everybody's the parents there, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
if they fell and hit their knee, it was like, it's okay, your dad's over there. Come on, let's go. And that safety, there's very, very few places now with that level of safety and comfort for people to be in. Now that's not everybody's experience, right? I get that, but that's my experience. And as a coach, I used to get, one of my assistant coaches used to give me grief because I knew all the boys' mums, I knew all the players' mums. But I always loved that welcoming. And here's a clubland story for you, right? I'm head coach at Murrayfield Wanderers, a club that are based at Murrayfield. And the clubhouse this day was rammed. Like, you could not get the drink to your lips because your elbows couldn't move. We had 3 teams at home, 3 away teams were in, committee are there, supporters are there, families are there. It was rammed. And I came up into the clubhouse, and I never go to the committee room, but I thought, I'm going to the committee room for a pie. I think we've won. There's 3 teams at home. Like, they cannot have anything to complain about today. So I go into the committee room. I'm speaking to a great guy who was our director of rugby at the time, Keith Craig. Good rugby guy. I'm chatting to him. So how do you think we got on the day? And I tell him how we got on today. And then into the clubhouse comes this guy, right? I'm not going to tell you who it is. This guy comes in. Now, our second 15, we're playing against a second 15 from the Scottish borders. And this club has got British Lions. And this guy comes in, and he's sort of looking around, and I wave him over, and he comes over and he's speaking to Keith and I. I said, can I get you a drink? Yeah, I'll take a pint. So I get him a pint. Didn't pay for it because I got it for the committee bar. So I hand him a pint, and we're having a chat. And I said, how come it's taking you so long to get in? He said, oh, I had to sort the jerseys in the club, in the changing room, because the buggers never put them out the right way. And then I had to put them on I had to empty the water bottles, and I had to put it all on the bus before I came up. And I was like, right, okay, and we chat away, and their bus is leaving. Great to see you. Away you go. Right. This guy was Roy Laidlaw.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. British and Irish Lions legend, the best scrum half in the world at the time, played with John Rutherford. Roy Laidlaw is picking up the second 15 shirts for Jed Forrest and emptying the water bottles and putting them on the bus. Did he need to be there? Did he chuff? And I got to have a beer with Roy. I bought him a beer, got it from the committee bar, and have a chat with Roy. And I'm thinking, he's just walked into a club rooms, and hardly any of these buggers know who he is. And it's Roy Laidlaw. But he's been picking up jerseys and emptying water bottles. Now, you're not telling me that a footballer from that era is in amateur sport putting that level of volunteering expertise into use. Just no way. And I coached his son, and I know his son and his nephew, and I told him that story, and he said, do you know something? The only places that he's now known are the borders. He can't move in the borders for getting stopped because he's a hero. Wales and New Zealand. He said, as soon as he comes to the city in Edinburgh or Glasgow, nobody has a clue who he is. And I was like, this is just, but what a guy. And that Clubland, to me, that day is one of my best days in Clubland. It was rammed, 3 teams, so you've got players who want to be something and players who are just playing because they want to play. Their families were in. My kids are running around somewhere, and a British Lions picking up jerseys and emptying water bottles. Like, Clubland, amen. I love the place.
That's a great story, and I love the fact that not in Roy Laidlaw's playing class, but every club has got at least one person who's like that, who's doing that kind of job, just completely selflessly, and wants to put something back into the game that they love. So, yeah, amazing story. Now, talking about Clubland, as you know, I am visiting your shores very, very soon. So I'd love to just have a quick little tour around the clubs, you know, with you, and maybe share some of the little stories that we spoke about the other day as well. Would be amazing.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous when I look at your map, and you're going to so many places. You're going to be welcomed. It's just spectacular, and you know you're going to meet some amazing people. It's a shame you can't spend longer in them, but you're going to get such a great reception.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So the route is going to be from up in the West Highlands through Glasgow, around Ayrshire, and then up diagonally across the country all the way up to Dundee, down through Edinburgh where you teach, I think is that right? And then
Yeah,
down
that's
into
right.
the borders where you're from as well. Yeah, so what do you think the highlights might be, or a couple of clubs to pick out along the road?
Well, you're starting at Oban Lorne, which is just going to be, and it's like pack a mac because it always rains in Oban. Uh, but so many good people up there, and that's where Magnus Bradbury is from, who's just about to head down to Bristol. Here's an exclusive for you. I saw Magnus last night, bumped into him, and I'll be honest here. I was taking my daughter to McDonald's, but I said to Magnus, "Oh, where are you off to?" He was away to the tanning salon, right? Magnus Bradbury, Bristol Bears, that's what you're getting. So that's where Magnus is from, and his mum Dee was the first female president of a tier 1 rugby nation, and what a lady that is. Like, hold on to your hat. She is a spectacular lady. So you'll get a brilliant welcome in Oban. I'm so pleased that you're starting there, and it's a beautiful place. If you can get the day of the year that the sun shines, you'll love it. And then you've got all kinds of places to visit. You've got great and places where Scotland Internationals and British Lions, touched their first rugby ball. And when you come through Central Belt and you get to places like Stirling County, there'll be a lot of clubs will claim they have the most picturesque ground, but when you get to Bridge Hall and you've got the Wallace Monument up on the hill there, and the history that is around that area of famous battles won, it's just beautiful. And they're a big club doing all sorts of things. They've got a Super Six franchise, they've got their club, they've got a mini section, they're churning out women internationals like they're going out of fashion. Like, what a conveyor belt. Great program for youth rugby in central Scotland. And then when you get into Edinburgh, like, I'm going to hook up with you, and I get a lot of grief from Bowness Rugby Club because they were doing a fundraiser for Doddie. They were doing a sponsored pedalo around the lake at the pond at the Kelpies at the Helix, and I joined them for the last lap, so I was in all the pictures. So be prepared for me joining you at the finish line. But when you get down here and you get to Watsonians and you get to Inverleith and Burham, you're going to be welcomed, and they're all so close together that the news will spread very quickly. And then I know Haddington have reached out to you and given you a huge warm welcome. East Lothian, the clubs there are a good bunch, and I coached an invitational team. I had a lot to do with the Co-Optimists, who are a bit like the Scottish Barbarians, and every year in May they play against an East Lothian select side where the players from Ross High, Dunbar, Haddington, Musselburgh, Preston Lodge come together and play. And there's so many great people down there, and the Pans and Ross High will look after you. And Haddington, heaps of good people. I know they're putting on a big event for you, so there'll be a big crowd there to welcome you in. And they've done things for Doddie themselves. There's a big group there who are really active and doing stuff for the foundation. And then you get to God's country, my man. Then you get to God's country when you get into the Scottish borders, and you'll see the towns, and you'll feel that culture of rugby, which will be different from the other spaces you go to, but there'll be lots of similarities too. And to finish off at Melrose, the home of rugby sevens, the home of Doddie, that's going to be special. They'll make a big deal. Doddie is one of theirs. I get a bit frustrated, I'm not going to lie to you though, when people claim he's from Melrose. Doddie's from up the road from me, right? He's from the Cortle Ferry Farm, so didn't give me this Melrose nonsense. But Melrose is definitely his club. Take your pick: Craig Chalmers, Kelly Brown, Jim Telfer, Ned Haig, who started the Sevens journey. it'll just be an amazing feeling of accomplishment, achievement, but feeling the love of that rugby family in clubland. Mate, I'm so jealous that you are getting to go through that, but there is no way in hell I could run that far. So good luck to you.
Thank you. I mean, I said to you the other day, I was excited anyway, and then I spoke to you about all the different things, and suddenly I was absolutely amped to get up there. And yeah, I can't wait. So, lastly, we mentioned it there a few times. I'm running in aid of the My Name's Doddie Foundation, which obviously Doddie Weir certainly got MND. Have you got any stories about the foundation itself or Doddie to share?
Yeah, but your Zoom's not got enough time for that. But what I will say to you is, Doddie's known me probably all my life. Our dads went to the same school. I played rugby with Doddie's brother. His sister works with my wife in a school as a PE teacher. So our links are there. And Doddie is a big part of why I'm sitting here speaking to you. As I got a new job and wasn't able to be a club coach, which was a sad moment. I wasn't able to give it the time with a new job that I got. I got involved in working with Edinburgh Rugby, doing stadium announcing and doing some hospitality, kind of. It was really in its early days at the club. And I got a message from a guy called James Nicholson, who was in charge of the hospitality company that ran hospitality at Murrayfield. And he'd asked if I could have a chat to him, and 100%. So in I went to have a chat to him, and Doddie had been diagnosed with MND, but because he loved the job he did at Murrayfield, so he hosted a room called the Thistle Suite, which has about 550 on a Calcutta Cup day. You know, it's rammed. For South Africa, it's rammed. New Zealand, it's rammed. Wales, you know, for Six Nations, it's a busy place. And it was Doddie's room, and it had been for 50 tests, I think, you know, so we're stretching back a long time. It was Doddie's room. But Doddie wanted to be involved in who became his successor. So James and Doddie had a chat about various people, and Doddie had said me. Now, Doddie had heard me speak at a dinner. He'd been in an audience when I'd spoken at a dinner. What's the polite way? It was a reasonably tough crowd, let's put it that way. And I don't know if that's where it came from. I don't know where, but Doddie had recommended me, so James had initiated this meeting. So we met, had a chat, and he said, right, it's Doddie's room until it's not, but I want you to work with them. So for a few autumn tests and Six Nations, Doddie and I worked together. Now, you don't really share a stage with Doddie. Doddie has the stage and you get a little bit of it, but it was an amazing experience, and we worked together. And you know, it was right, Bruce, you're going to be on the Six Nations, and then Doddie would say, nah, I feel fine. So Doddie would be the lead, and I would be stooge, really making fun of me being small and all sorts of other stuff. And it was an amazing thing. And through that, you know, I've done stuff with the foundation. I've tried to help as much as I can. I can't. I'd love to give them a couple of million. I can't do that, but what I can give them is my time and my energy and my enthusiasm. And through it, I've had some nice little moments that are just for me. And then I've had moments that we've shared on screens like this with the people that have watched things that we've done. And all along the way, Doddie's been grateful and sent a message, and he doesn't have to do that. But you know, I love him, you love him. People that have never met him love him. We all watched the '97 Lions. We all know the mistaken identity. We all saw what the guy, you know, nobody's heard of Mpumalanga in the world apart from British rugby fans. And we all hate the place. Like, none of us are going to Mpumalanga. If somebody says, by the way, we're going on tour to South Africa, if they were to put Mpumalanga on the schedule, you'd be like, I'm not going there, because we hate the place. And here's a very quick story for you. As a head coach of Watsonians in Edinburgh many moons ago, I used to get sent CVs by rugby agents. I got sent the CV of the guy who kicked Doddie's knee.
Wow.
Can you imagine if I brought him to Scottish Rugby?
That would have been a bit of a disaster, I'd imagine.
There'd have been a lynch mob at Edinburgh Airport, and I would have been on the top of the spike. So yeah, I just love him. I love what he stands for. I love how people have rallied around. But it's not just Doddie. There are lots of people that have got MND, but he's using his platform to try and make things better for everybody.
So amazing stories there about Doddie and, you know, that tour of South Africa, which is certainly where I fell in love with the guy. Just an amazing character. Have you got any more to share with us?
Do you know, one of the things I feel about that is because of Doddie's profile now, a lot of people don't realise how good a rugby player he was. But something we quite often joke with, that I was speaking to Stuart Tom, who, like you, does crazy challenges to help the foundation raise funds and awareness. And we were chatting about him going to New Zealand to do a crazy cycle in New Zealand. And he said, and Doddie scored 2 tries against them in the World Cup. Now, if you spend 10 minutes in Doddie's company, you're going to hear a story about him scoring 2 tries against the All Blacks in the World Cup. He does not miss with that one. But Doddie was a fantastic rugby player, and he played in the right era for Doddie. Who knows what would have happened if he was around now and played. But at that point, he was this big mad giraffe, as Bill McLaren christened him, and he had skills. I mean, he was a sevens player. Doddie was a good sevens player. Played for Scotland at sevens. Could play number 8. Could play in the second row, and then, was a professional rugby player, and then got to go on that tour. I mean, that tour was ideal for Doddie Weir. It was just out the back at amateur, becoming professional. There was a camera to play up to. And that scene where they're in the team meeting and, they're doing the media training and, Doddie, you were seen stumbling out a nightclub at 2 a.m. the week of the test. And for him to, you can hear the murmur. Everybody knows he's about to deliver something. And he just has, I think he puts his tongue in his cheek and he says, it's mistaken identity. And the whole place just goes, whoosh. And you're like, he's got so much of that. And the thing, I find that I've got a top 3. Okay, I've got Bill McLaren, who was impartial, so everybody loved. I don't know anyone who has got anything to come back on Bill McLaren with. There's John Olomu, because he changed the game and he was humble, and everything we know now makes us marvel at what he did even more. And I don't think there are many that would sling mud at Jonah. And the third one's Doddie Weir, who, those 3 men to me cross boundaries in a way that very few others do. And Doddie was a good rugby player who would be wearing illegal studs, and he would have taken them down your back in a Melrose Gala derby. But in the bar after the game, like he'd be 6 pints deep with you, no problem at all. Like there was no malice there. And then to go on and have the career he had, speaking to people, hosting things, speaking at dinners, becoming the personality, I suppose, or not becoming, showing the personality he was, but in a forum that made him some money and, raised his profile. Nobody grudged that. Nobody grudges people like that. And then to get delivered that, and I mean, he when he found out and he buggered off on the Lions tour when it was announced, and he left his phone. I mean, how many people now can leave their phone for the duration of 10 minutes, never mind a Lions tour? And away he went to have a tour. He's unique. I know that you could say that about anyone and everyone, but Doddie's unique, and the way he's kept going and the way he's kept fronting up and being at things, the ovation he got at the Sports Personality of the Year, just what a guy. And to now have that band that he has of Rob Burrows and Stephen Darby, and now it looks like Ed Slater, unfortunately, has been added to the group. They're using their profile to support other people. And we hear about the breakthroughs in research and medicine, but what we're not hearing many stories of are the people they've helped redo their bathrooms, or the support they're given, and that's amazing. And it's mobilized people for a cause. And I got someone contacted me recently to say their mum's getting married. They would like to they're going to have a donation rather than presents to the foundation. They're going to have the badges as favors. I mean, people are coming up with all these creative ideas to try and support something or someone that means something to them. And when I worked with Doddie, just one last story. When I worked with Doddie, I was his photographer. Like, people would be wanting selfies, but because he was so big, their arms weren't long enough to get him in. So I would say, do you want me to take it? So I would take and Doddie stood for every selfie. He signed every autobiography or every program or every, at times where he found it difficult. But he didn't just stand and get the picture. He would say, oh, where are you from? And then he would have a little dig at them for where they were from, or he would say, oh, do you know Big Mental Davy? And he had time for each of them. So the day he's being given the freedom of Edinburgh is the day Scotland play South Africa at Murrayfield. So I have a meeting with James Nicholson, and he said, right, Bruce, this is your first one on your own, because Doddie's going to be in the middle of Edinburgh at the City Chambers being given the freedom of the city. So until he gets here, it's your room. So I'm excited, but I'm nervous. And I'm thinking, yes, it's a bit like when I was a student teacher and the teacher left the room and it was like, right, this is me, like, this is mine now. So Doddie's up in the centre of Edinburgh in the Royal Mile, and Rob Wainwright's organised the Gump Rally. So there's thousands of people there wearing the Doddie Weir headbands, seeing Doddie being given the freedom of the city, and then Doddie's going to be put in a car and brought to Murrayfield, and everybody else is going to march them 2 miles to Murrayfield Stadium. Brilliant by Rob, and Doddie got the adulation. So I'm up on stage. I've got 500 odd people in the room ready for the Springboks game. They're all buzzing. I'm thinking, right, I've got heaps of time on my own here. And then it's a long room, okay, at the side of the stadium in the main stand. It's a long room. And I just see at the corner of my eye, the door open at the far end, and the bugger walks in. I've been on stage for 10 minutes. Like, I'm supposed to be there for it. Like, it could be forever. He might not even get there before kickoff. And he walks in, and he just comes and he stands right here in my eye line. But you know, while I was a bit sad, but it's always great having him on stage. But what I was able to do in front of those 500 odd people, normally what would happen is, they would play a little intro and we would walk up on the stage together and we would have a little before we got started. But I was able to introduce Doddie onto the stage. And it was a really cool moment because I don't script very much, as you're now well aware. So I was able just to pour out this Doddie, and I had a dig at him, but I gave him the big build up, and the whole room just went whoosh, and everybody stood up and the cheers, and it was like a rock star had come on the stage. Like, it took so long for them to sit down and shut up, and he felt uncomfortable but loved it, and I just was able to stand back and go, that was cool. Like, that was really cool. And then we had a grand old time, and he was so welcoming to me. He was so, there was no back in your box, son. There was, but it was all in jest on the stage. But he really helped me, and from that room is now mine. I mean, go figure. Like, I'm Davy Moyes to his Alec Ferguson. But it was just an amazing thing, and from that, you know, he wanted to look after the future in the same way he's doing through the foundation, because he cares about people and he cares about the memory, and he loves the game, and more than that, he loves the people that are in it. So yeah, I mean, as you're now finding out, I could talk about him all day long, and he's the only person in the world that calls me Brusco. I don't know where it came from. I mean, I get called many things, but he's the only one in the world that calls me Brusco. All right, Brusco, what's happening, Brusco? And I don't know where it comes from, but do you know what? It's Doddie's pet name for me, so I'm taking it.
Yeah, for sure. Bruce, it's so amazing to hear all these stories from you. And as I said earlier, I'm really excited to come up there to Scotland and experience it all for myself. So I just can't wait. But before we close this up, have you got any sort of closing thoughts or things you want to say?
Yeah, I have, mate. Do you know, when I watch what you're up to on social media, right, it fills me with joy. You're one of the people on social media that's well worth following, because you fill people up rather than drag anything down or have a punt. And when you were talking about where to go, you were probably sick of me on Twitter talking about Scotland, and you were asking where you could go, and I was sending you clubs, and I was, and when you announced you were coming to Scotland, it was a brilliant thing. And now we've connected in this way, and I'm going to get to meet you in the flesh when you get up here and you start doing the run. You're going to be welcomed. You're going to love it. I can't wait to see how it goes and what happens. And you're doing a great thing in the great game for a great cause, about a great man, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so excited to see you. So do you know what, my man, all the best of the preparations. I saw you on social media the last couple of days talking about the length of runs you've been doing. It's further than I drive in my car, so good luck to you, mate. And just come and enjoy Scotland, and hopefully, you know, we'll get a little bit of time in your busy schedule to have a chat and a coffee or a Lucozade and just enjoy it. So all the very best. I absolutely love you. I think you are some man.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Very kind. And everybody out there, look, I really encourage you to get on the Happiness is Egg-Shaped bandwagon and listen to the podcast. It can't help but improve your day and make you feel a bit happier, that's for sure. Everything we've mentioned here today will be in the show notes, linked below. So it's all there, very easy for you to go and get hold of. Bruce, thank you once more. And I look forward to seeing you in about a month. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Top man. Cheers.